Okay, Shabbat Shalom to you. Welcome to Real Bible Study again. It's Saturday morning, the 31st of January. I'd like to welcome you, first timers and long time participants. This is our fifth installment of this particular teaching session with your host. This is a Hebrew faith, as my opening always are. Try to be as consistent as possible with this opening so that you have a clear understanding of what you are reading here. And this has nothing to do with the Roman Catholic Church nor the Protestant Reformation movement of the 14th century. However, these are the two elements that has been forefront for several centuries now, and this is how most people understand the scriptures, through a religion called Christianity. That you will not find that word anywhere in the scriptures, and that's the funny part. Most people affiliate or associate the religion of Christianity with the scriptures, and that is not the case. Denominations as of today's date. So that's a lot of people and a lot of opinions. So we need to narrow down what the scripture is actually speaking about and how this would impact you either adversely, because not everyone is actually speaking the truth when it comes to the scripture. A lot of people have different opinions and feelings and ideologies when it comes to the scripture. But when you read the scriptures for yourself, you would find that it's totally different and it's practiced different than what the apostles and the Messiah, Yahusha, who the world falsely calls Jesus Christ today, those that follow that particular belief, their Messiah of Christianity had a birthday last month. Was he? And why is he important? If you're reading this book, okay, let's get to my notes real quick. Okay, so we're going to take a look at a word here, covenant. So covenant in the Hebrew meaning berit. A covenant was instituted by two parties. A covenant who would take the fatted animal, so two parties would be in this particular covenant. So a covenant was instituted by the two parties of the covenant who would take a fatted animal, the best of the flock or herd, and cut it into two pieces. Then the two parties of the covenant would pass through the pieces, symbolizing their dedication to the covenant. And by this action, they are saying, if I do not hold to the agreements of this covenant, you can do to me what we did to this animal. So this is a visual of the covenant, where they would cut an animal in half, the best of their herd, cattle, ram, sheep, cut it in two and walk between it. And if any of the party was to break the covenant, the agreement that is outlined in the covenant, you can do to the individual what we did to the covenant. So you see how serious a covenant was according to the Hebrew perspective. Now when you hear the word covenant, you may think of an agreement, but there's not any teeth in that term. An agreement between two people, or a contract. Today a lot of people break contracts very easily, agreements. So there's really no teeth behind it. If someone breaks a contract, then you might take them to court, file suit against them to get compensation for breach of contract. However, in the Hebrewic term or the meaning, they knew that it was not a very wise thing to break a covenant, because you may not be alive, because this is what they said here. They would cut. You had the permission. We would do what we just did to this animal right here. So this is how important a covenant was. So let's take a look at, I think it's the book of Jeremiah. Twenty, sorry, 34. From verses 18, that's between the parts of the calf. So this is the Most High speaking to the house of Judah in the covenant which he made with them. So the Most High made covenants or agreements that we call in our modern language. So this is what a covenant is. So let's take a look at some more scriptures here. So it says, and Yahuwah was gracious unto them, and had compassion on them, and had respect unto them, because of his covenant with Abraham, Yitzchak, Isaac, and Jacob, Jacob, and would not destroy them, neither cast he them from his presence as yet. That's 2 Kings chapter 13, verses 23. And you sons of the prophets, and you are sons of the prophets, and the covenant, and of the covenant Elohim made with your fathers, when he said to Abraham, through your offspring, all the families of the earth will be blessed. That's Acts chapter 3, verses 25. He has helped his servant Yasharel in remembrance of his mercy, as he promised to our fathers, to Abraham and his descendants forever. That's Luke chapter 1, 55 to 54. It says here, I surely will bless you, and I will multiply your descendants like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will possess the gates of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations of the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. That's the book of Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 22, 17 through 18. But Yahuwah replied, your wife Sarah will indeed bear you a son, and you are to name him Yitzchak, or Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. That's Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 17, verses 19. But you, O Yasharel, my servant, Jacob, or Jacob, whom I have chosen, descendant of Abraham, my friend, I bought you from the ends of the earth and called you from the farthest corners. I said, you are my servant. I have chosen and not rejected. The book of Joshua again, and this is chapter 12. Okay, good morning. Okay, So we're going to the book of Joshua again. We're going to read from chapter 12. Okay. So yesterday we read from we ended at verse 61 of Joshua 11, where we saw where Abram was brought to King Nimrod to give an account for what he did to his father's idols. Well, we know that Abram's father was an idolater. He had 12 idols, one for each month. And Abram went in to feed these idols to see if they would do anything. And they did nothing. So he was so furious that his dad would be worshiping things that he made with his own hands, that he destroyed 11 of them, and he put an axe in the hand of the largest one in the house of confinement. So Abram was in a house of confinement. He was in prison, and he was brought before Nimrod and his sages and wise men. So it goes on to say, and the king said to the princes and sages, have you heard what Abraham the son of Terah has done to his father? Thus he has done to him, and I ordered him to be brought before me. And thus he has spoken. His heart did not misgive him, neither did he stir in my presence. And behold, now he is confined in prison. And therefore, decide what judgment is due to this man who reviled the king, who spoke and did all the things that you heard. And they all answered the king, saying, the man who reviles the king should be hanged on a tree. But having done all the things that he said, and having despised our gods, he must therefore be burned to death. For this is the law in this matter. If it pleases the king, Abram's father said to the king, my master and king, you have heard the truth, and what your sages have said is true. And the king said, how could you do this thing, to transgress my orders, and to give me a child that you did not beget, and to take value for him? And Terah answered the king, because my tender feelings were excited for my son at that time, and I took a son of my handmaid and brought him to the king. And the king said, who advised you to do this? Tell me, do not hide it from me, and then you will not die. And Terah was greatly terrified in the king's presence. And he said to the king, it was my eldest son, Haran. He advised me to do this. So Haran was Abram's older brother. Haran was also the father of Lot, and also the father of Milcah, also the father of Sarai, who Abram would later marry, and her name would become Sarah. And Haran was 32 years old in those days that Abram was born. And Haran did not advise his father to do anything, for Terah said this to the king in order to deliver his soul from the king. So he's given up, according to the saying, he threw his son under the bus. So he's given up his son. He's saying that his son advised him to do it, which he did not. Your son Haran, who advised you to do this, will die through fire with Abram, for the sentence of death is on him for having rebelled against the king's desire in doing this thing. And at that time, Haran felt inclined to follow the ways of Abram. So watch what he did here. But he kept it within himself. So he was secretly following Abram. He didn't make it known to anyone. And Haran said in his heart, behold, now the king has seized Abram on account of these things. which Abram did. And it will come to pass that if Abram prevails over the king, I will follow him. But if the king prevails, I will go after the king. So he was double-minded. He had two hearts. He said, if Abraham prevails against the king, he will follow the ways that Abraham follows, or the Most High, which were on them. And they bound their hands and feet with linen cords. And the servants of the king lifted them up and cast them both into the furnace. And Yahuwah loved Abram, and he had compassion over him. And Yahuwah came down and delivered Abram from the fire, and he was not burned. But all the cords which bound him were burned, while Abram remained and walked around in the fire. This sounds familiar. This sounds like when we read Daniel, when Daniel was cast in the furnace. We see this happening here. And Haran died. Abram's brother died when he had cast into the fire, and he was burned to ashes. For his heart was not perfect with Yahweh. And those men who cast him into the fire, the flame of the fire spread over them, and they were burned. And 12 men of them died. And Abram walked in the midst of the fire for 3 days and 3 nights. And all the servants of the king saw him walking in the fire. And they came and told the king, saying, Behold, we have seen Abram walking around in the midst of the fire, and even the lower garments which are on him are not burned, but the cords with which he was bound is burned. And when the king heard their words, his heart fainted, and he would not believe. So he sent faithful princes to see this matter. And they went and saw it and told it to the king. And the king rose to go and see it. And he saw Abram walking to and fro in the midst of the fire. And he saw Haran's body burned. And the king wondered greatly. And the king ordered Abram to be taken out of the fire. And his servants approached to take him out, and they could not, for the fire was around, and the flame ascending towards them from the furnace. And the king's servants fled from it. And the king rebuked them, saying, Hurry and bring Abram out of the fire, that you will not die. And the servants of the king again approached to bring Abram out, and the flames came on them and burned their faces, so that 8 of them died. And when the king saw that his servants could not approach the fire, lest they should have been burned, the king called Abram, O servant of Yahuwah, who is in heaven, go out from the midst of the fire, and come here before me. And Abram listened to the voice of the king, and he went out from the fire, and came and stood before the king. And when Abram came out, the king and all the servants saw Abram coming before the king with his lower garments on him, for they were not burned, but the cord which he was bound with was burned. And the king said to Abram, How is it that you were not burned in the fire? And Abram said to the king, Yahuwah, the Elohim of heavens and earth, in whom I trust, and whom has all in his power, he delivered me from the fire into which you cast me. And Haran, my brother, and Haran, the brother of Abram, was burned to ashes. And they sought for his body, and found it consumed. And Haran was 82 years old when he died in the fire at Kasdim. And the king, princes, and inhabitants of the land, seeing that Abram was delivered from the fire, they came and bowed down to Abram. And Abram said to them, Do not bow down to me, but bow down to Yahuwah of the world, who made you, and serve him, and go in his ways. For it is he who delivered me from out of the fire. And it is he who created the souls and spirits of all men, and formed man in his mother's womb, and brought him out into the world. And it is he who will deliver those who trust in him from all pain. And this thing seemed very wonderful in the eyes of the king and princes. And Abram was saved from the fire, and that Haran was burned. And the king gave Abraham many presents, and he gave him two head and he gave him his two head servants from the king's house. And the name of one was Oni, and the name of the other was Eleazar. And all the king's princes and servants gave Abraham many gifts of silver and gold and pearl. And the king and his princes sent him away, and he went in peace. So let me stop right there. So right here we saw where Abram was, he was tested. And his brother, his older brother, was tested as well. His older brother did not know Yahuwah, nor did he keep his way. But he, in his heart, said, if Abraham prevails over King Nimrod, I will follow the ways that Abram follows. But if he fails in his efforts and the king succeeds, I will follow the ways of the king. So today we have people like that where they are not in right alignment with the Creator, but they are part of what is called this world system. They're led, they conform to this world, and you can see the evidence by just looking at what people practice. Now, Abraham is a central figure in the history of Scripture, and if you're reading the Scriptures, understand that Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. And it's out of Isaac's lineage is where the Mashiach, the Messiah, comes from later on, as you get to what we call the renewed covenant. Some call it the New Testament. Don't like that word testament, but the covenant, renewed covenant. So when we look at the scriptures from that point of view, we see that Abraham, he believed Yahuwah, and it was counted for him. He obeyed the Most High to the extent where he actually gave up his son as a sacrifice. He's the only person in scriptures where it is called, he's assigned the term friend. No one else has that allotted term where the Most High calls him a friend because of obedience. So let's see if we could get through the rest of chapter 12 of Jasher. Okay. So verse 41 reads, and Abram went out from the king in peace, and many of the king's servants followed him, and about 300 men joined him. And Abram returned on that day and went to his father's house, he and the men that followed him. And Abram served Yahuwah his Elohim all the days of his life, and he walked in his ways and followed his law. Right here. So in Christianity, they say that, Abram was before the law, but it is not the case. When you read everything, all the books that we have, the ones that were redacted, it says Abram followed his instructions or his law. And from that day forward, Abram inclined his hearts of the sons of men and served Yahuwah. And at that time Nahor and Abram took wives for themselves and daughters of their brother Haran. The wife of Nahor was Milcah, and the name of Abram's wife was Sarai. And Sarai, wife of Abram, was barren, and she had no offspring in those days. And at the expiration of 2 years from Abram's going out of the fire, that is in the 52nd year of his life, behold, King Nimrod sat in Babel on his throne, and the king fell asleep and dreamed that he was standing with his troops and hosts in a valley opposite the king's furnace. And he lifted up his eyes and saw a man king. And there came out from the egg a young bird, which came before the king, and flew at his head, and plucked out the king's eyes. And the king was grieved at the sight, and he awoke out of his sleep, and his spirit was agitated, and he felt a great terror. And in the morning the king rose from his couch in fear, his couch in fear. And he ordered all the men, all the wise men and magicians to come before him. When the king related his dreams to them, the wise men, servants of the king, whose name was Anuki, answered the king, saying, This is nothing else but the evil of Abraham and his seed, which will spring up against my master and the king in the latter days. And behold, the day will come when Abraham and his seed and the children of his household will war with my king, and will strike all the king's host and his troops. And as to what you have said concerning 3 men, which you saw like yourself, and which escaped, this means that only you will escape, and the 3 kings from the kings of the earth will be with you in battle. And that which you saw of the river, which turned to an egg as at first, and the young bird plucking out your eyes, this means nothing else but the seed of Abraham, which will slay the king in latter days. This is my king's dream, and the interpretation of it, and the dream is true. So right here we see where the Nimrod had a dream that Abram's seed will be the ending of his kingdom, as is prophesied when we read earlier today. We read in the book of Genesis. Let's get to that scripture real quick. Genesis chapter 22, it says, I will surely bless you, and I will multiply your descendants like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will possess the gates of their enemies. And through your offspring, all nations of the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So right there we took a look, for the last several weeks, we took a look at Abraham, the father or the patriarch of the faith. And one thing we need to understand is that this has nothing to do with any religion. However, religion has been placed upon the understanding of the majority. So as you and I read the scriptures, realize that this is a covenant that the Most High has made with a specific people in the earth today. And next month would be the first, or tomorrow actually will be the first of, on this calendar, February. In the United States, they celebrate, or they have a special allotted some days in the calendar month of February called Black History Month, the adjective that they use to describe a group of people. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to run through the scriptures as we always do, because this is a real Bible study. I'd like to thank you for your time this morning. This was not a long one. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me in the comments. You're going to get this also on YouTube as well, so you can actually like, share, and subscribe as we move forward with reading and understanding the scripture and walking in truth and not in religion. So with that said, shalom to you and yours, and Elohim willing, we will see next week.